Hello, everyone. It's George from Ireland. Well, an eye-catching policy from the Labour government in the United Kingdom coming out, but methinks this is only going to be applicable to South Britain. But so Shabana Mahmood has proposed this, and she is the Lord Chancellor and Secretary State for Justice, a Labour MP, of course. Almost everyone who's been Lord Chancellor has been a barrister. So she has suggested that those who are in prison for rape or sex crimes against children might be obliged to take chemical castration. Note the word chemical. We're not talking about anything barbaric or mutilation, is voluntarily accepting injections which will reduce their libido such that they would not pose a danger to the public. And at the moment, it's being trialed in two parts of southwestern England, where men, so far as I know, it's only men in prison for such crimes can elect to take this treatment so that their sex drive will be reduced to almost nil, and therefore they wouldn't pose any peril to the public. Because I mean, I've heard of a man who was in France, it was years ago, it was on the news, who was a monstrous paedophile committing the most unspeakable crimes against little children. And he said he honestly couldn't help himself and wanted to have such treatment because it's the only way to prevent him doing so. Now, in Denmark and in Germany and so on, this has been done. It's optional, so the criminals can choose to have it, and then that makes them safe towards the public. It's better for the men themselves who had it because they're not going to be end up in prison. They're not going to suffer vigilante attacks and so on. Whereas in Poland, it is compulsory for some sex offenders. So, I mean, it seems like a magic bullet if people can take this medical treatment or maybe even have it against their will, and then no longer pose a danger to the public, great. I mean, it's a win-win situation. So the previous Lord Chancellor, David Gauke, who was a Conservative, in his independent sentencing review, he suggested this was a possibility and also make people safe to release from prison earlier and so forth. So should we go about this? So here, Shabana Mahmood is wanting to talk tough. Yeah. So this could be a good thing, but does it actually work? What it's called is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and so that will reduce sexual thoughts that people aren't able to control. There's anti-androgens that reduces testosterone, which means the person has less sexual desire. But there's a debate. I mean, how effective is it? Is it totally effective, largely effective? Is it more effective in some people than others? So there's an offender personality disorder pathway, which is the National Health Service and the Prison and Probation Service are running this to can they get people to change their problematic criminal behaviors, no longer be a danger to the public. So it definitely lowers reoffending rates. It's disputable how much it reduces it. You might say, well, anything even reduces it, but that's a good thing. One study looked at 10 criminals, why do I have to say offenders, and none of them reoffended, which is good news. So there's another study which said it reduced it by 60%. So, okay, that's not perfect, but that's still a dramatic improvement. Now, what's problematic about it is what if they don't want to take it? Would you give it to them against their will? And many doctors would say, well, that's unethical. You mustn't treat patients against their will in non-emergency situations. Would you find doctors and nurses willing to do this? I mean, I don't know if there are any side effects. There no doubt there'll be human rights challenges in the courts. We'll see. But wait a second, all those other countries who have it are signed up to the European Convention on Human Rights. Poland is, for example, and Poland's been using it successfully for several years. Okay. Now, sometimes, be very successful in Germany and Denmark, but that's of those who opt to have it. And maybe those who opt to have it are less likely to offend anyway. Okay. Goodness. Now, I'd be reluctant to make it compulsory, but maybe we should. So, what's her name? Shabana Mahmood is saying, let's we can't be squeamish about this. We've got to be firm. No doubt, it'll do very well amongst the amongst tabloid readers. So don't want to do anything barbaric. In a civilized society, even the worst people are treated humanely, which is why we have no death penalty. Or certainly the United Kingdom's in some way an uncivilized society and uses ultra violence against the weakest members of our society. And that's because we've got a lot of bigots, a lot of nutters out there, can't be reasoned with, a lot of demagogic politicians who'll just do anything for power and titles. the kudos that accrues to them by advocating for the mass murder of little kids. But anyway, back to this particular topic. Yeah, I mean, if we could have a magic pill to stop burglary or vandalism, would we go for that one? I mean, we might do. The dangerous thing is, are we going for mind control? Are we just drugging people up and so on? Hmm. There are other things about it. Is I'm worried about the slippery slope. To use it for rapists, fine. Who would object to even making that compulsory? And people who commit sexual assault, which is sort of touching someone against her or his will, you see that's a less serious crime. I know it is still a bad thing to do, definitely a bad thing to do, but maybe that be an overreaction. Maybe that's unreasonable and disproportionate in relation to the offence and the risk. And it goes to lower and lower levels. People who look at child sexual abuse images, obviously that must be nauseating. Who would want to look at that? The very idea is repugnant to any decent person. There are various levels of that, and I don't want to think what the worst level of that is about. Are we going to do this for simply looking at a photo? However horrendous that photo is that too much to inject someone against his or her will and to take away this person's sex drive completely? And I realize it's not a victimless crime. There's a child in that photo, and he or she is being abused. And that's monstrous. But okay, you can argue we do that. And then it gets to the stage that somebody will wolf whistled at someone. Are we going to inject this person against the will? They're not feminazis who say, oh, that's a crime. It's all serious to us, blah, blah. Looking at someone in public, looking at someone. That's sexual staring. How many seconds turn to look into a stare? Is it 2 seconds or 3 seconds or 10 seconds or what? What about the neurodiverse? Some people are frankly odd and they don't pick up on these unwritten rules of society, and they don't realize that looking for someone else for too long is aggressive, it makes that person feel deeply uncomfortable, and is antisocial. And so these people with various disorders, with Asperger's syndrome, are they going to be injected just for looking at people for too long on public transport? Where does it stop? Where will it lead? And people who commit crimes of violence, against adults, just men pinching other men, are we going to lower their testosterone levels? Maybe we should, and then we end up where, we're medicalizing all sorts of things. Are we also letting these people off the hook? These sex criminals, by saying they can't control themselves, is not their fault. It's the chemistry of the brain, and brains do vary, and there is chemistry in the brain. That's definitely the case. Rather than personal responsibility, you do have agency. You do have control. There's such a thing as choice, and I know choice is not as broad as some pretend. Some people have got addictive personalities and so on. But anyway, maybe that's getting too philosophical. If we can solve a problem, well, why wouldn't we solve it? Where the downsides are slight, and the downsides are maybe just not worth considering, but obviously we could be saving people for the most horrific crimes. So Shabana Mahmood, I got to give it a cautious welcome. The Conservative Party hasn't come back on this thing. It's the kind of thing that Reform UK has been proposing for some time. Well, thanks for watching my channel. Make sure you subscribe to me on Patreon, donate PayPal, georgecallan79@gmail.com. Shabana Mahmood, the second woman ever to hold that office, the first being Liz Truss, the first non-white person to occupy that office. She was at Lincoln College, Oxford, with Rishi Sunak, and they got on quite well, actually. Was she something in the junior common room, and he supported for it, or was it vice versa? All right, toodaloo.